Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video where I will be trying something a little bit different. If you follow my channel, you know that I usually tend to post speed paints. I used to upload a lot of voiceover videos, mostly redesigns and creepypasta readings, which are both things I would like to get back to. But for today I will be doing something a little bit different. If you read the title, you already have a basic idea. Basically this video is to talk about an OC of mine, the process that came into creating him and his design choices and also his backstory. First, a little bit info. The OC I'm talking about is called Fettucine. He's a Danganronpa OC. It's not too important to the story, but a little bit info. Danganronpa takes place in a universe with a school called Hope's Peak Academy. Basically, if you're the best at anything, it does not matter what it is, but if you're the best at something specific and you're in the high school, if you're in the age of high school, you can attend there as the ultimate whatever your talent is. And there's also the idea of a killing game. In the first game, it is 16 students that get caught up in a school. The setting changes based on games. I won't go too much into it, but just a basic explanation. You have to kill someone. After someone is killed, all students will have time to investigate, and then they need to discuss who the killer is. If they vote for the right killer at the end, only the killer gets executed. If they vote for the wrong killer, the killer can leave and everyone else gets executed. It's not too important to the story, but since it was created for a Danganronpa roleplay, I felt like I should at least mention it. So first I will talk about the design process and other things. The reason for its creation was a Danganronpa RP I was in. It was the second season basically. We already had a first killing game, but I created him for the second one of the same people. I actually created him out of spite, because at first I wanted to make a really pretty boy, absolute baby, a kinda living doll kinda type, but the people that ran the RP said it was forbidden to do anything like that, even like not if it was an actual doll, but only like a pretty boy kinda type, so I created him out of spite. His name is Fettucine. He is the ultimate archer. Basically just meaning he's an archer. I guess. Inspiration for his designs were Robin Hood, as you could probably imagine, though specifically the Robin Hood from the old Disney cartoon where he's a fox. Some other inspiration were a bit of Snufkin from Moomin. Though I haven't watched the show, I saw a lot of it because many of my friends were into it, and I probably should watch it. Other inspirations were basically just a little feel of the woods life. I had many changes made for him throughout the story, including adding additional family members and working it out. Before I get too much into it, I also want to mention the reason I'm doing this one on Chris specifically. Like, I'm starting off with him because I do want to make more of multiple OCs to start a video. The reason I started with Chris was basically just because he's one of the most developed OCs I have, and I know many of my friends do like him the best from my OCs. Chris also had a lot of personal influences of me, both in design and the way he acts. Specifically, he has a lot of my insecurities and a lot of things I deal with. He's sort of made to cope. This is why he has a really big meaning to me. He is sort of the personification of some of my biggest fears and some of the things I'm scared to become, which is why I can get really personal with him. Now I would like to move on to the story of him, but before I do that I will give a warning. His story does include unhealthy relationships, child abuse, mentions of choking and starving, and also conspiracy theories. So the story starts with Chris' parents, who were both into conspiracy theories, and the difference is his mom was basically just interested in it and thought it was kinda cool, and his dad was complete nutsack. He was completely lost in his own world of conspiracy theories, and they met and at a convention actually, and they fell in love and had Chris, but after that their relationship turned abusive. Chris' father started abusing the mom, and so 3 years after Chris was born, she ran away. She was unable to take him with her, which she regrets dearly, but she does get a happy end. I will mention this more if I do another video of an OC of Mankey's half-sister, but his mother did get a happy ending. And so Chris then lived with his father alone, and his father was convinced it was the end of the world because he saw no other logical reason that his girlfriend would leave him, because he's like that. And so when Chris was 5 and was supposed to start in kindergarten and like actually have social contacts, his father took him to the woods. Yeah, he didn't really had a lot of other family because of his tendencies. The father wasn't close with his other relatives, and he didn't really have any friends, so it wasn't too hard to make them kind of disappear. At first, he lived together with Chris in the woods, but as time grew on, he left Chris more and more alone, which made Chris become really independent, but also really untrusting towards his father. There was a specific point, which I refer to as the winter of 14. I never settled when exactly he was born, since I usually only really use him in RP, so age sometimes changes to fit the other ages. So the winter of 14 means the winter when he was 14, which was when Chris was completely left alone by his father for about a year. And the reason it's really important is because in the winter Chris almost died because he couldn't find any food and mostly just was lying in his house in the woods all alone, and that is when he truly became to hate his father. The father knew about this, and he always told Chris that humans were monsters, so he wouldn't interact with them. And at that point, to make sure his son stays obedient, he told Chris too that he himself is a monster, which Chris at first didn't believe, but later on told himself that to keep him calm and to justify his actions. His father also forced him to kill any humans he saw, which weren't a lot since they were really well hidden away, but still it fucked them up good. So when he was 14 and the father finally came back, they had a big argument, which turned really physically really fast, and it came to the point where his father almost choked Chris to death, which this left scars on him, and it made Chris so irrationally angry that in his rage he killed his father. He took the coat of his father and wore it from then on to remember him by, because whilst he really did despise his father for everything he had done, he didn't want to believe his father was lying to him, because it was all he ever knew, and it was his entire world collapsing around him. He usually would, in the killing games, would usually go when he was around 15. In the one I'm using him right now, he actually got a boyfriend, which, good for him, he deserves love. He's a good boy. Usually I'd imagine him later on, after the killing games, he would turn back to his woods and live there in peace, because, again, he does know by now that humans aren't all monsters, and that humans can be trusted, but it's just the fact that he doesn't want to believe that all his father ever did was lie to him to manipulate him. And so he would usually, my personal headcanon I have for him now, or I guess his canon since he is my OC, would be for him to make it up until 40, 50, at which point he would die alone in the woods, but he would be at peace with that. Some fun facts about Chris, which aren't really that fun. So his last name is Fettucine. The real reason for that is basically I have a server with some creepypasta fans, and they're all really close, and we joke, we do consider as a family, and we joked our last name is Fettucine, and as Chris is a very personal OC of mine and he kinda needed a last name, I decided to go with that. The in-canon version is that his father stocked up on pre-made pasta a lot, and Chris never learned how to read. He's illiterate, buffoon, and the only word he can read to this day is fettuccine, which he thought was an important word because he saw it all around him on the pre-made pasta. It really isn't. The bow he uses, he made himself. It's out of birch wood, and he usually uses, at first he uses a normal bow, but as he becomes older he uses a long-range bow. Chris wears dresses too. He doesn't wear them too often because it's hard to move around, but usually in winter he will wear a lot of them because they keep you warm. He has clinical lycanthropia, which I definitely mispronounced, which basically means he believes himself to be a werewolf, so if he's under the full moon, or if he knows it's the full moon, like if he's in a room he can't see the moon, but he knows last night was the night before full moon, he will go completely animalistic. This also happens to him if he's somewhere completely in the dark, as he will see himself as a monster, and he's all, basically you'll be unable to see him some sort. He has 3 scars under his eyes. Those were inspired a bit by 3 little scars I have myself. You can barely see them since I got them when I was really small. But yeah, the in-character version is that he got this on a hunt. He also has a lip piercing, which he just got to say fuck you dad. He wears a mullet. Before the argument with his father, when he was 14, he wore a haircut which is sort of like Link from The Legend of Zelda, because I like that haircut, but afterwards, to change himself, because he didn't want to see himself like that anymore, he changed his hairstyle to a mohawk, which I love. Again, the design reason is simply that I love mohawks, and I personally have one the entire time. I don't style it up to spikes like Chris has, but he does have a mohawk, and I do too. His hair is always really dirty, which is how the spikes stay. He hates being clean. Despite that, he is really good at cleaning and organizing things because he was always taught organization is the key to survival. His hair is really fluffy if you were to wash it though, like a sheep. Another fun fact is because of his lycanthropia, he always sees himself with sort of wolf ears, which is part of some visual hallucinations he has. They get worse the darker it gets. He's a buffoon. He's unable to make social contact. He gets attached to people real quickly actually, and usually if he sees someone that is kind to him but also weak, he will cling to them and protect them because he thinks they are unfit for survival, because in the woods obviously someone who's very frail and weak wouldn't survive that long. In this society, of course, it isn't like that, but it's not in Chris' world, so that's his way of showing that he cares and that he wants to protect them. He also eats a lot, which is just another thing that I copied from myself, is when he sees something to eat, he just eats as much as he can, because you never know when you will get food again, which was another thing from my life I took to cope, but also something I think fits really well with his way of living and his story. A nickname he has gained in an RP, the one I use him right now, is Wolfie, because he acts a lot like a wolf, but I do think with his color scheme, a fox would probably be better. I do have some beta designs of him. He is the only OC I think I have that I actually worked on that I do have some beta designs. If I try and remember it, I will put them on screen, but the first one was a lot like his current one, except he didn't have the Liberty spikes in his mohawk, and he didn't have coats. The coat didn't have like sleeves. The second one was more differently a lot, but it's a bit like I imagine him to look without his coat. The last things I want to mention is if he goes back to the woods afterwards, with 21 he burns his coat because he wants to abandon all things he has from his father to finally move on and be free from himself and from the trauma. So yeah, that is all I have to say about Chris as of this moment. I always just imagine more things about him. Like I said, he is a very personal OC of mine, and he is one of the ones I worked on the most. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like. If you have any ideas on how to make this better or want to tell me something, feel free to comment below. I really appreciate it. And if you like this video, if this video is well received, and maybe more videos on my OCs, just talking about them a bit. I know it has been a long time since I did videos with voiceover, but I still hope you enjoy this. And I hope you have a good night or day wherever you are. Goodbye.